Well, I have 1 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. I think there's a few people who saw my maps and may come back. I should have put them outside in the main hall. Friends and relatives, my name is Dakota Goodhouse. I'm from Standing Rock. Dakota Tkate Tipi Washte Machia. Ian Woslao E Mataha. Makoche Chante Wakwa LYT. I live in Mandan, North Dakota now. Hunkbabka Inawaye. On my mom's side, I'm Hunkbabka. Hunkduana Wichiana Adewaye. On my father's side, I am Upper Yanktone. And today's topic is Ochedi Shakomi Kamakoche. It's the geography of the Dakota Lakota people. So thank you for spending a few minutes with me here. And here we go. Makowapi, Lakota geography. And the scope of this geography today reaches across North America from the west coast to the east coast, from as far north as the Great Slave Lake, as far south as the Gulf of Taco Bell. Whatever you want to call it, Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico. So let's advance my slides here. If anyone has questions at any point, I'm glad to address those. So firstly, I'd like to talk about time and how Dakota Lakota people relate to the moons in the homeland. So we're looking at a full moon with a circle of light around it. The Lakota people call that circle of light around the moon AIHEC, and it means in context, when it's around the moon, it's the moon makes a fire for herself. When we look up in the sky and see sundogs, it's also called AIHEC, and in context then it's the sun makes a fire for himself. Anyway, so we're looking at this, and hopefully you can see that there is a woman inside the moon. And Lakota people call her Hangwi, and when she vigorously stirs her pot, light spills out about her lodge, and that's what gives us the circle that appears around the moon. So when we look at it, that is what we see. But I'm Northern Lakota, and I know that other Dakota Lakota people see different things. I am aware too that sometimes our Southern Lakota relatives, they look up and see a flute player in the moon. So I haven't included my watercolor of that image, but I'll share a link where you can find that. I do have it. Anyway, but so there's this, and this one, I don't know if you can make it out or not, but here is this is how the Dakota people, when they look at the moon, they don't see a man in the moon, they don't see a flute player in the moon, they don't see a woman stirring her pot vigorously. No. Hopefully this is a little better here. They see a bison in the moon. They see a bison in the moon. So Dakota relatives, they see a bison in the moon. So this is kind of relevant because Dakota is spoken east of the Red River of the North, east of the Big Sioux River in general, and then along the James River, Chansansawakpa, the Creamy White Tree River. The Middle Dakota language is spoken. We say Yankton and Yanktone. And west of the Missouri River, Tintuan Lakota. So how we view the moon, it also relates to our relationship in the landscape as Dakota speaker, Lakota speaking people. All right, now we'll get into some geography proper. This is one of our very special places in the Black Hills. I think all Lakota probably know this already, but there is Peshla, and it has several different names. But this is where, a long time ago, that a baby fell from the heavens. And Dakota people call him Starborn. Lakota people, we call him Wichachbi Hinkboye. This is where he fell. His mother died, bringing him into this world. She fell from the heavens, and that's another story. But here is where all the animals came together, and it was decided that the Western meadowlark would raise this little baby. And it's fortunate because Western meadowlark speaks Lakota. Tkashia Gamuka speaks Lakota. Anyway, so this is where that event happened. It has several different names there. One of those is they wave it over their heads. That is in reference to this being a sacred place where traditional enemies would come together. And when they sat down to talk over their differences, at the end of their meeting, they might stand up and take the blanket or the robe they were sitting on and wave it over the other person. And in a way, taking them as a relative. They came as enemies and they depart as cousins, as brothers. So that's a neat way of bringing peace, and it happened here. Not just between Lakota and other tribes, but it could be Arikara, Crow, Blackfeet, Shoshone, Kiowa, so many other tribes. Anyway, so this is where that peace would take place. This is where that boy, that little baby, fell from the heavens and was raised and became a Lakota-speaking man. They have a very special place here west of us, and it has several names too, one of which is Matotibila, one of the most well-known names. The Lakota people say a long time ago there wasn't the Bear Lodge there. That wasn't there until there were some sisters who went out to gather. And while they were gathering, a little boy was following them and playing as if he was a bear. And suddenly they could hear an actual bear, and they looked back and they saw this little boy transforming into a bear. And so he chased after them as a bear would chase after game. These 7 sisters cried out for aid, and no one could tell where the sisters were calling from. And so a voice from the sky called out, "Inaji, don't move, stop." So I think the very best part of this narrative is that Dakota people made the observation that if a bear is coming at you, you're better off not running. For National Park Service, was a thing. Yeah, okay. So these 7 sisters stopped, and with his voice, Fallen Star raised the stone on which those sisters were standing on top of, and it carried them up to safety. And so there's various interpretations of this story. A giant bear or several bears scored the sides of this stone feature, giving it the look it has today. But this is how that feature came to be. It was with the voice of Fallen Star saving these sisters. Now some people say, oh, well, the sisters, they became part of the heavens. They stepped into the sky from there. But in this version of this story, those 7 sisters were told to call out their favorite bird, and those birds came and picked them up and carried them down below where the camp was. So they were saved. Those 7 sisters, they aged together. They had this phenomenal supernatural experience together. And in later days, when they were grandmothers, they came back to camp at this site here. And so those 7 grandmothers, they said, "Doksha'ake" to the camp. And then they moved to these 7 high points north and west of Bear Lodge. So you can see there's the what the park rangers call the Little Missouri Buttes. Those are the 7 grandmothers. And after the sun set, these 7 grandmothers, they became the 7 stars that we know today as Pleiades. So the cool thing about some of these very special places is that there's a reflection or an appearance, a kapemony, in the world here and in the heavens above. So the general shape of those points located on that map and the seven sisters there as the constellation, they have this general appearance that look alike. And so we jump across the landscape to Dakota country. This one is Ohuha Owapi, where the pictures are burned into the stone. They're burned. Lightning has struck and burned them into the stone. Fire has made images in the stone. So it's a real place there. And if you can imagine this on the right picture here, it's actually an arm with a hand. And if I could put my hand up next to it here. So it's right about there. This site is where a fallen star fell in love with a young Dakota woman. And in this story, she is productive, she's busy, she's helpful. And when Dakota Lakota people would hear these stories a long time ago, when children listened along, they would call out, "Lemiye, that's me. Lemiye, that's me." So when girls hear this story and they hear this story of this productive, generous, kind woman, they want to be that too. And so they call out, "That's me." When we hear stories of fallen star and him stepping in selflessly, boys and girls alike too would call out, "That's me." They internalize the practice of these virtues. Okay, so let's talk about this site then. So there's the arm in the stone. How'd that get there? What does that commemorate? So they say a long time ago when fallen star came to this camp that was in the vicinity of this stone, he fell in love with this Dakota woman who told him that she couldn't marry unless he could do the impossible. Her father instructed all young men, if they wanted to marry his daughter, they had to go up into the heavens and get the chief's arm back. So impossible task, but not for fallen star. The chief has his own backstory here. I think I can share that. The chief, when he was a younger man, he engaged in a sun dance and didn't put himself into the ceremony. And so a thunderbird came out of the heavens in various stories. This is one of them. Snatched his arm and took it up into the sky and placed it in the heavens and poked fun at him, made fun of him for having one arm. Every night he would go out and see his arm in the sky. Anyway, so we have this petroglyph of the arm, the chief who lost his arm. That's what that is. So as for fallen star though, he heard this narrative and he heard the challenge of the chief and said that he would go after the chief's arm. So at Sundance, he stepped into the circle and was instantly in the heavens, like as if a bolt of lightning had struck. Okay, so in one moment he was here, the next moment he was in the heavens. He was on a fantastic journey across the sky. He found the chief's arm, he put it in his possible bag and began his journey back across the heavens. But then he slipped and fell into what's called the dark tunnel. Okay, so I don't know if anyone's ever heard the dark tunnel. Dakota Lakota people don't have a hell. So this is a dark tunnel. Fallen star fell, fell into this dark tunnel, and he heard these disembodied voices around him. Who are you? Where are you from? All these voices. And in the darkness, it could be a little scary. So fallen star, he remembered that he had in his possible bag a coal, and he pulled it out and he breathed upon it. And he reminded that coal that it was once full of warmth and light. And light began to emerge, warmth began to envelop him. And as he became caught up in light and warmth, there were some figures of these voices that stepped into the light and others that stepped back from the light. Those who stepped into the light remembered they were people. They remembered they used to be stars. And Fallen Star told all the nation that was in the dark tunnel to take hold of him and he would rescue them. So the traditional greeting of Lakota people, at least as far as Hunkbapka goes, is left hand to right shoulder. So they took hold of Fallen Star and he reached into his possible bag and pulled out an eagle plume. He breathed upon it and he transformed into a great spotted eagle. And there he lifted himself up and those who held on to him, and he flew out of the dark tunnel. Now there's some who say that Inkdomi has a role, the trickster has a role in this story. He wove a web over the exit and trying to keep Fallen Star from breaking free. They couldn't hold him though, so he flew up and out and broke through Inkdomi's trap, and he carried all those souls, all those stars back onto the spirit road. And so when Ocheri Shakomi people look up into the night sky, they see at one point, it looks like in the Milky Way, there's a fork in the heavens. That is where Fallen Star broke through the dark tunnel. I think this is a kind of story that's important for us in a theological sense. So when I hear this story, I hear that there's redemption beyond death. This is a very important narrative. When Christians came and missionized, there's only redemption only happens if we're alive. And if somebody commits something and doesn't ask for that redemption, they go to hell. But we have so many relatives who have a huge emotional burden, and sometimes they may take their own lives. A minister or a pastor or a priest might say, oh, that's an unforgivable sin. They're going to hell. Here we have the story of Fallen Star who, in a moment, realizes that there are people in the dark tunnel. There's some who don't want to be saved, those who step back into the darkness. And there's those who want that redemption and want another shot. They take hold of him and he saves them, breaks the trail onto the spirit road for them. I can't imagine heaven without relatives who've taken their lives, good souls. That's why this story is important. Well, let's get back to this. Fallen Star comes back. He gets back across the sky, and again, like lightning, he appears. One moment he's in the heavens, and the next moment he's back in the Sundance circle. There he is, he's in the circle. He has the chief's arm, and he presents it to the chief. And the chief has his arm back, and it's different because he has changed. The quality of the chief, the virtue of the chief, the character of the chief has changed, even as he looks at this changed arm that he has. He has his arm back. So it's a beautiful story of Fallen Star breaking the trail and saving. It's the savior narrative, if you will, of Lakota Dakota people. And there it is at Jeffers Petroglyphs. So, that chief who lost his arm, there's a constellation that goes along with it. And so some Lakota people look at it and say, oh, this is different. They look at this, and this is the fluidity of culture, is that at certain times of year we can look at it and see different things. In this case, in midwinter, when Middle Dakota people look up into the night sky on the longest night, and they see it directly above us, that is the chief who lost his arm. So for us, if we're look at the way our Dakota relatives look at it, it's an inverted arm, and the three stars, Orion's belt, is the wrist. And so this is how we should look at it, as the chief's arm. So I think that's kind of neat. You talk to some of our Dakota Lakota relatives in the summertime, then it's not. It's a lodge. It's a sacred lodge. It's a teepee. Okay, well, let's go with one more narrative of this fallen star figure as the savior narrative of Lakota. So this is a wonderful, beautiful place. It's in North Dakota. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of North Dakota's highest point. It's called White Butte. And there is reference to this in Amos Badhart-Hold's works, White Butte. And he has an association of this site with the Black Hills in his map of the Black Hills. The only thing is that when we locate this site, the creamy white earth butte, it's out of what we would call the range of the Black Hills. It's north of the Cave Hills. But then our Hunkpapa people say, well, the Cave Hills, that's actually the arteries that go with the Black Hills, the Wind Cave. So it is all connected. It is within the circle of the Black Hills. So depending on how we look at it, yes, this is part of the Black Hills. Amos Badhart illustrated that so. And so we're looking at White Butte, North Dakota's highest point. Let me advance my slide here. This is White Earth Butte, looking from the top, looking from the sky, looking down below. This is about what it looks like. It's just on the east side of the Can-Am Highway. So anyone is driving north of Spearfish, you take the highway all the way north, the Can-Am Highway 85, it goes right by it. So White Butte is on the right side, and Black Butte is on the left side, the west side of Highway 85. Black Butte is where our northern Lakota people say this is where Wazia left his children in the summer for the summer months. That's frost and cold and wind. Locals would go and butcher their cattle and store their meat year-round in the caves there without any regard for what we would say about it. Anyway, so there's Black Butte on the west side of the highway, White Butte on the right. The highway goes right between the two. Because most of these very special places have a divine reflection in the night sky. This is the Kapemini, the reflection of White Earth Butte. And so the brightest star in this constellation is what the Greeks and Romans and Arabs call Capella. But this is what the Ochedi Shakomi call Wichakbi Inkbaye. Wichakbi Ukdayeki, Wichakbi Inkbaye. This is the constellation of fallen star. And so the Greeks and Romans would see a shepherd, but I think we have to deconstruct the lines and how other people of the world view the constellation. So I rearranged the lines here to look more like a figure reaching up north, like so. So this is how a Dakota person might envision the same constellation. So it's a figure that's reaching north like this. And this makes sense. He has his hand reaching north. So you can see it's this arm reaching north like so. As a line there on the left side of this, as we look up in the night sky, he is reaching, the constellation is pointing to his father. So who's his father then? Wichakbi Owanjila, the star that does not move. And you and I know that as the North Star. Well, in this narrative, when fallen star as a baby and his mother fell from the heavens, fallen star's father felt so bad about watching his wife fall and die that he stopped moving, he knelt down, and he refused to move again. That's the father of fallen star. So he's reaching up like so, reaching up to his father. Let's get to that narrative then. Okay, so here's my illustration. I couldn't ask anyone else to do it, so I had to do it myself. At one time, our people were camped just south of White Earth Butte. Only we didn't call it, we didn't have an association with Fallen Star yet. But there at camp, Fallen Star heard a voice call out to him to take his place in the heavens, to be with his Father. And so he couldn't ignore that voice. And as the day went on, he gathered the people in a great circle. So when they gathered in the circle, Fallen Star then turned to his left and embraced the persons next to him and shared positive, constructive words. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that done, but at many of our public occasions like graduations, we do this. On Standing Rock, we call it the Niobrara Circle. I don't know what they call it anywhere else, but it's when someone goes and embraces that person, handshake, warm, productive, kind words, because we didn't know if we'd see them again. So Fallen Star began this tradition. He turned to the next person, and the next person, and everyone behind him followed him until they went all the way around the circle. Traditional Lakota goodbyes could last for hours. You start talking as soon as they're ready to go. Anyway, so Lakota people, they learned this. How to say goodbye is as important as how we say hello. And we didn't know if we'd see each other after the passing of the seasons. So we should share positive, constructive words with each other. That's Lakota Kichiapi, the way of speaking with affection to each other. Okay, so Fallen Star and his kola, his best friend for life, they went all the way around the circle. And then after they finished, his friend and he walked to the top of the butte. And Fallen Star turned to his friend, Doksha Ake, Kola Doksha Ake, Wachilan Dukte. And he turned to his friend and said, until next time, we'll see each other again. For sure, we'll see each other again. And he died. He died. He laid down on top of that summit and died. But his story doesn't end there, because he transformed into light. And he rose into the heavens and took his place in the sky next to his Father. And I think that's a beautiful story. When did that happen? On the longest night of the year. Winter solstice. Hangetu Hanska. Hunkwapkalias. When you do a Hana. Hangetu Hanska. Leabu. At least my people, the Hunkwapka, would have called it the longest night. So I think that's neat. We should remember a story like this on the longest night. After he rose into the sky, I think our Lakota people who know this story, they say that after he took his place, he sends rays of light and hope to his people here in the world. So that's Fallen Star. Here's a better look at Hanyetu Hanskawi, the long night moon. Lakota Dakota people have several names for the moons of the year. This is just one that I know. The long night moon, you and I would say December. Wanichokayawi, that's a midwinter moon. And there's the constellation right above an inverted crescent. That's the old pictograph for the moon event. So that's that. Here is my website. I neglected to update my QR code, so that's, please don't look at it. It'll take you to someplace else. I don't know. But there's my site, The First Scout, Ochiri Shakonwi History and Culture. And there's no ads. I'm not generating any kind of revenue. So I have maps there online, and so I have a little time here. I want to share some geography. So we got some important stories about geography in the landscape. And I want to take us to a map that I created. Again, I didn't update this QR code. I'm very sorry. You'll have my website information there, The First Scout. As of 2 months ago, I have surpassed 2,400 place names in North America that have a Dakota or a Lakota place name. And I draw all of these from publicly available resources like books, journals, letters, magazines, interviews, oral tradition, maps. I've referenced over 400 historic maps to construct this interactive Google map for you. So let's close this out and share the resource itself. So this one is of the current view of it, and there's so many ways that we can go to build a lesson. If anyone is thinking of creating a lesson plan, all the blue are waters, confluences, lakes, springs. All of the green is hills, summits, ranges, sites of interest, sites of prayer, and everything that is red, all the red pins are all conflicts. And so one of the lessons that I take and construct from my own map is that Oceti Sakowin people have almost 100 conflicts with the United States military across North America. And every month of the year, we should be remembering these conflicts. We should remember these beyond Little Bighorn, beyond Wounded Knee. Every month there is a conflict that we've had with the United States. So we're one of less than a dozen tribes across North America that the United States sought to put out our strength, to put out the fire of our strength. That's why we have so many conflicts. I think I have 94 conflicts on this map. So anyway, let me zoom out here. And just share a few. Oh. Here is the Columbia River. And this one comes from a couple of different sources. One is, so there's my attribution there, Diane Medicine Stone. She had this beautiful story of a man 13 generations ago who went all the way to the West Coast and back. And in her story, she said that her Lala never was struck by smallpox. And when St. Memon did a portrait of White Wolf, there was no smallpox scarring on him at all. How and why did he escape when smallpox was ravaging North America during the American Revolution? 1776 to 1782, and this guy was around. How did he not get smallpox? He happened to journey west as smallpox was hitting the Great Plains, and on his journey back, he saw the ravages of smallpox, and he just missed it. He was very fortunate. Anyway, so did Lakota people go as far west as the Columbia River? I'm of a mind to say yes, because there's tribes there out on the west coast who would acquire dentalium and trade it to Lakota people. So if Lakota people didn't go all the way to the Cloud River or the Great River, we had allies, traders who certainly did, and those are the Nimipu, the Nez Perce, Pokehdoka. They certainly went all the way to the west coast, and then trying to zoom in here to Yellowstone country. Here we are. At the base of this summit right here, the obsidian mountain, obsidian cliff. This is where relatives would come to trade to acquire that dentalium, and this is where Mandans, Hidatzas, Dakota, Lakota people would get that dentalium. I think that's kind of neat. The country, by extension, the Yellowstone country, is Makoche Wakan. Makoche Wakan. So I think if anyone is reading Dakota Lakota history, you can access this map here for yourself. And if you do so, when you find references to places, you can pick it up on my map and get an idea of it. Form your own mental map of where Dakota Lakota people were when event happened. Anyway, so Yellowstone country is Makoche Wakan, and if we interpret that literally, Ka is energy, Wakan is with energy, Makoche is country. That's the country with energy. Yes, it's the holy country too, but it's the country with energy. That's where we went to get trade items, dentalium and obsidian. Let's see, I have one. Oh, battle country. This is another one here real quick. The western half of what we call Wyoming was a battleground between the Shoshone, the Crow, Lakota, Arapaho, and Kiowa. And the conflict reached such a state that all of our tribes could not call it what it used to be. Whatever it used to be, I don't know. But we all came to call it, reference it as battle country. Battle country. So when I hear land acknowledgements, one of the things I go to is not treaties. We shouldn't go to treaties. We should go to the military history maps, because military wanted to know where their enemies were. So I think we get an idea when we look at military maps where our people were, where our friends and relatives were. Treaties, that's just something that's a land grab. That's what that is, to get tribes to say this is their land and then treat with them accordingly. No, military survey maps, they detail exactly where our peoples were in the landscape. So occupational history, this is one of those places, occupational history, that Lakota people were a part of too. So that is battle country. And so there's Rainy Butte. The Arkansas River is Flint River, and the country south of the Flint River is the country beyond Flint River. That's the furthest extent of Lakota reach as far as horse raids go. I think that's neat. There's my attribution. There's where I'm getting it from. Okay, so I want to take us to, here we go. Oh, not that one. The Missouri headwaters real quick, and then I'll start winding it to a close. Okay, so here we are, we're looking at this name, Minnetonka. This is a Hunkpapa name too, but there is another attribution. A very long time ago, the Hunkpapa people were not called Hunkpapa. There was some split, and whoever you read or whoever tells you how that split came to be, I don't know how or why a split came to be, but along the Missouri River, there's some Lakota people who chose to go north along the river, and those who went north along the Missouri River, those who stayed, those who went south, they referred to those who went north as Inkpapkayata, those who go to the source. Okay, so this is where the source of the Missouri River is. This is where the people who came to be Hunkpapka, this is where we went. This is where we became Hunkpapka, by going to the source. Inkbabka Yata, and then becoming Inkbabka. So the source of the Missouri River, Minishoshe, is the Minnetonka, the Great Water. The amazing thing about this is that this water, it goes north and westerly. It goes across the landscape south in a sinuous line all the way to the confluence of the Mississippi, Missouri. Only for Oceti-Sakowin people, it's the Mississippi that converges with the Missouri, not the other way around. So it's the Missouri River, Minishoshe, that goes all the way to the Gulf. Here we have the Gulf, where it becomes Minnetonka, the Great Water. For Dakota relatives along the Mississippi River, Chachawakpa, it's an integral part of their place in landscape. When they look up into the night sky and see the Milky Way, that's the divine reflection of their river. But for Tituan Lakota people, when we look up into the night sky, the divine reflection of the Missouri River is also the Milky Way, the Spirit Road. So anyway, what's pretty cool about this event right here that's recorded back in 1915 is Charging Bear and Red Tomahawk were making a speech in New Orleans, and the local tribe there's a few other tribes there, but one tribe is called the Biloxi. They could understand what these two men were saying. They understood without an interpreter. So they're a distant relative, Siouan-speaking relative. Linguists could tell you that. I didn't know that until I came across the reference. Oh, there's Dakota Lakota-speaking people in Louisiana. Well, there are. Anyway, but this is a wonderful reference. This water begins as the Great Water. It goes across the landscape as the water astir. And then when it reaches its end, it becomes the Great Water again. I think it's a beautiful metaphor for life and spirit. Okay. One last narrative, and then I'll wind it down. Okay, so I'm working on a paper right now about the earliest reference to horse. There is a winter count here in South Dakota. It's in the collections now at the National Museum of American Indian. It's called the Batista Goodwinter Count. It begins in 901 AD, and the second cycle of story features this circle, and inside the circle is a horse. And the cycle of year is around 1100 AD. So sometime about 900 years ago, Dakota people saw a horse. Now the official government interpretation of the document that goes with Batista Good's winter count tells us to ignore this story. It's just myth, it's just fantasy, ignore it, it's not real. And when I look at geography and listen to story of place, this is one of those that suddenly makes me reassess the story of the first horse. So, what happened on the St. Lawrence River 900 years ago? Well, there was a group who came and settled, the non-natives who settled at a place the Dakota people call Elk Island, that we know today as Newfoundland. And there's my reference there of place name. That's a place of memory. So Dakota people didn't need biologists to tell them that there is a high proportion population of elk on the island. They knew that 900 years ago. Okay, so the Vikings came and settled. And in their manifest, when they settled, they wrote in their journals that they brought cattle, goats, They also brought dogs and horses. Okay, so this is where I get into an argument with anthropologists and archaeologists. The physical record of Viking settlement, when they built their homes, there's no physical record of horses. There's none, but yet they built to accommodate horses. What's the deal there, right? Well, they ate their horses. They butchered them. They consumed them. Sometime 900 years ago, there were Dakota people who went out and probably traded with the Iroquois. They may have gone as far as the island there and made this observation and recorded it. In history, all you need is two independent sources to verify an event, person, or place. This is one of those events. We saw the horse sometime around 1100. It's not a myth. It's not fantasy. It's real. We saw horses. Lila ehana shund nuni udaki heunkeabi. Those who still draw breath and remember this story still share this story. And it's not questioned. I used to question, but now I have to embrace it. Anyway, so where the Iroquois people are too, there's another interesting little story. Getting back to the St. Lawrence River, Dakota people have a name for that. The very earliest record of contact between the French and Tetuan Lakota people, it's not even when the French came out and explored and settled and claimed the Mississippi River for King Louis. No, it's actually in 1640 at the Niagara Falls. And it's not Dakota people, it's Tetuan Lakota people, Lakota-speaking people who were captured by the Iroquois, who had just made a 1,000-mile journey themselves from their country to the Missouri River and back again to their country. They brought coffle-bound Lakota people where they adopted them into their nation because they had been struck by smallpox, a series of smallpox. And they called the series of wars that followed with other tribes the Mourning Wars. And they had to rebuild their population by going into the interior of Indian country and capturing and bringing them back. So if you're a Tetuan Lakota person, those are our relatives. They just forgot. Yeah, earliest record is with the Jesuits and Tetuan Lakota people, 1640 at Niagara Falls. Dakota people have a name for Niagara Falls too. Anyway, so now I should wind it down. There is Niagara Falls. There's a poster version of my map with Lakota Dakota place names, and I have those posts kind of taped to the wall back there. The one on the left is the 150th commemorative map of the Black Hills expedition. I put that together a couple years ago now and shared it last summer in Custer, South Dakota. And there's only about a handful of Native people that were there in Custer at the 150th anniversary. But in keeping with being a Lakota person, I refer to the Black Hills expedition as the Thieves Road, and you'll see that for yourself on my map. But I removed all the English and replaced it all with Lakota. It was kind of easy to do because difficult to believe, but if we see it for ourselves, there were more Dakota Lakota scouts with General Custer on that expedition than there were Ripper Rock. And the orders of the day record some of those places. And so it was easy for me to look at that and just pull it, bring it into that map. The second map, the bigger map over there, is North America, and you'll see, excuse me, you'll see on, excuse me, You'll see on that map, there's no reference to Turtle Island. And because I could not find any historic reference to Dakota people ever calling the Great Plains, and by extension North America, Turtle Island, I did not include that on my map. There's several names. There must be 9 of them up there. Mahoche Luta, the beautiful red country. And that's a beautiful name. Why not call our country beautiful red country? Lila ihana hunkpap kaleas, Mahoche ki mahbiat khathea leahu. One of my favorite phrases for this country is, "This is the land of sky and wind." And I think that's probably the most fitting name I can think of, because when we look at linguistic data and apply it to landscape here, Dakota is spoken in woodlands. Lakota is a language of the plains. Now there's some people who say, oh, Lakota people didn't come onto the plains until 1680. They were pushed out of Minnesota, and I think that's incorrect. Because Lakota is a language of the wind, and it didn't. Dakota people didn't just come out onto the plains and say, you know, in order for us to be understood, all the D's need to be L's, our K's need to be G's, and our B's should be W's. You know, that does sound ridiculous. Through natural observation, when Western meadowlark wants to be heard, when Western meadowlark Tashiagumuka makes an announcement of fresh water, when we hear it, we can hear it clearly 9 miles away, 10 miles away. You can hear that. When the Lakota person, when the language, when the dialect developed to the plains, it's natural observation that did not happen. That didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in one generation. It had to have been spoken. Even the French made that observation in 1640. They speak Lakota. They don't speak Dakota. So I think that language can be our own evidence. When Lakota people say we've been here for a long time, why not just embrace that belief? Why not embrace it? We have been here for a long time. Natural observation. When the Lakota singer sings, his voice or her voice can be heard without modification, without microphone, without speaker, even with wind up to 9 or 10 miles away. That is a fact. Lakota can be understood. English can't, because English developed in a land of fog and wind. It falls apart on the plains. I can't hear a neighbor call across a mile away because it falls apart. What? It just falls apart. Anyway, when Lakota people say our language has been here for a long time, forever, it's been here as long as natural observation has made that. Anyway, so that's some of my work. If there's questions or comments, I'm glad to take some. Observations. Stunned silence. Yeah.
When did you start making this map? About how long?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. When did I start making this map? In 2016, relatives on Standing Rock, where I'm from, I have some aunts and uncles and a few cousins who said, we need a resource so that our non-native relatives can look at and see our country that is occupied, where they can see that we have place names. And so the map originally developed as a request of relatives who were at the camps, the demonstrations at Cannonball. And I never stopped. My relatives never said stop. So I still work on this. At the time, I think I only had like 300 or 400 places, but now I've surpassed 2,400 places. And my relatives never asked me to stop, so I keep going. And it's all drawn from public available resources. And I have had a few folks from various THPOs ask why I share this publicly. Why am I sharing it freely? And I share it freely, I share it openly. There's no ads, I'm not generating any revenue. I share it because I have students who have questions about places. I have students who have questions about story. And I know some of the stories say that we should wait for snow to be on the ground. And the reality is we live in the 21st century, and I have to be able to answer students' questions freely. I can't gatekeep. If they have questions about place, questions about occupation, question of story of place, I feel like I need to answer those any time of the year. So I don't know if that answers your question, but came out of a request to create a map. I just kept going.
This is just kind of a working map, but build.
Yeah. This is something that I've just kept going, kept constructing. In fact, there's two versions of this map here, not just this one here, but there's one I'm working on comparing the reach and influence of Ochedi-Shakoni language and Plains Indian Sign Language, and if we look at that, I think I have it here. There's Hidatsa too. I feel weird because I have other tribe maps that I've created, but I have never made those free and available because I'm not Hidatsa, I'm not Nez Perce, I'm not Cheyenne, so I shouldn't share other tribes' place names. But here, I just think, for example, if we just take the data in itself and overlap the extent of bison reach with Ochedi-Shakoni historic occupation, so that's in yellow. And if we overlap that with signed language, there's more than one signed language. There's Plains Indian Sign Language, and then there's other signed language. But if we overlap all of that data, and if we go back to my original map, we can see that where most of the points are, where the overlap of bison, where the overlap of language, the furthest extent of language, the overlap of Plains Indian Sign Language, this is the heartland of Ochedi-Shakoni people. So anyway, it's all free though. You could download the data. I made that map. No, it's free though. It's not mine. Now there is a project called Remapping the Ochedi-Shakoni, and I don't know if I like it. They're using my own map here that I'm sharing with you, and they're using my thesis in their bibliography. And I feel like I've done most of the work, and I don't mind it as long as they're giving some attribution. But also, it's just not my map. It's not my place name. This is our places. This is our homeland. Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you plan to extend out to other tribes? I just noticed Ochedi-Shakoni mainly, but I was just thinking, other battles that might have happened in South Lakota, or maybe even up towards Alaska, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Well, we got
thinking of things like that just off the top of my head.
Yeah. Well, we got one of the furthest south conflicts here, the Kidder Fight, 1867. That's between the Cheyenne and Lakota against, let's see, 14 Cheyenne and Oglala against 10 soldiers. So even if it's just a small fight like that, I still think it needs to be included on this map because it's a conflict between the concentration policies of the United States, and it's something that you and I should remember as Lakota people anyway. So I used to have a calendar that would go hand in glove with the presentation, but I just haven't made a calendar in a year. I might do it again, but I do have memorial days. Well, Kiksuye Ambitu. So those are memorial days that have every conflict mentioned here. but there's one further east, and that's in Ohio. There's a couple in Ohio, and it's because there were Lakota people who fought in the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was fought in Ohio, was fought along the East Coast, along the Gulf Coast. But in this case, the Charger, whose descendants are at Sistine-Wapiton and at Spirit Lake, and a few at Standing Rock, he was commissioned as an English captain, and he recruited up to 800 Lakota people to fight in Ohio against Americans. And I think, why didn't I hear about that when I took North Dakota Studies in 4th grade? So it's a good thing that I also do some work with North Dakota Studies. I have written a few pieces for North Dakota Studies. First time in ND Studies history, we have a Native American actually writing a history about our history that's being studied in North Dakota at least. Anyway, but that story there, that's where that happened. The War of 1812 was also fought west along the Missouri River in 3 places. It was fought north of Bismarck at Knife River. It was fought in the vicinity of present-day Bismarck when there was a trading post there. And then it was fought near the metropolis of Kennel, South Dakota. It was fought there. And in that case, the Lakota people, my people, our people, burned down the fort and drove out the American Fur Company just 2 weeks, incidentally, after Sacagawea gave birth to a baby girl. But now, I feel like you can probably tell my mind's like dominoes. It starts getting me talking, and I talk about a bunch of other stuff. My classes are like that. My students just endure my rambles. Anyway, I like history. I like talking about it. And anyway, there are almost 100 conflicts with the United States throughout every month of the year. One other tribe that comes to mind that has that kind of level of conflicts, and that's the Seminole, who also won a war against the United States, and the Apache, who were pursued and chased and engaged in conflict year-round. Anyway, there's not many tribes who engage in the United States to this extent. One last thing, and then I should really cap myself unless there's other questions. But when we compare the number of conflicts, everything in red, all the points in red, and we look at D. Brown's American West, Brown informs us that at the height of the Plains Indian Wars, that it cost the U.S. military $1 million to shoot and kill an Indian. And if we just look at the conflicts alone that the U.S. military fought against Lakota Dakota people, where's that 1 million? Well, how does that add up to that? Where's Brown coming from? That's the monies it costs to recruit a soldier, train a soldier, feed a soldier, supply a soldier, horses, supplies for horses, meat and food supplies for the soldiers, uniforms, training, and the campaign itself, all culminating with actually taking a shot. And it should be mind-blowing to us when we see this many conflicts here, how invested the United States was in exterminating Dakota Lakota people. And I think I should stop there. Oh, a question, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Ojibwe from White Earth, and I've been very interested in the history of Minnesota before we arrived there. And I'm curious, like, specifically, like, the Minnesota-Canada border, like, pre-Ojibwe arrival, like, what was the makeup? Because I've been very confused about where the Cree and the Assiniboine were, Stoney. I'm curious, like, what, kind of where those borders were.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I can answer that question to your satisfaction, but I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah.
In this general area here, there's an overlap of Oceti-Shakoni homeland. And so if I just make a few adjustments here on my map, we can see here is 1680. And all that's in blue right here that has popped up, this is the furthest extent north as far as Dakota people reached and settled. There's archaeological physical record of Dakota villages here around this area, Lake of the Woods. And there's some places like this that the Anishinaabe referred to as Sioux Narrows and Sioux Lookout. I don't know how it's said in your language, but certainly your people and our people lived there and co-occupied the landscape. So co-occupation is different than treaties. Treaties is to say that's Anishinaabe, this is Dakota. Co-occupation is where even traditional enemies, they sat down and said, we're going to fight, but I think we can live together. So this is all Dakota. I think I even have my attribution here. Let's just click on the blue. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this is a French map I found, and you can see the Anishinaabe term there, not oasis for us, but also in the journal of this French, of the Jesuits in 1640, we can see Dakota occupation in the landscape. So the French were relying on record of where potential enemies and tribes to trade with and tribes to convert. So we co-occupied, and some of the stories that we share are co-shared. So one of those that comes to mind real quick is right here at this island here, Isle Royale National Park. The Anishinaabe and Dakota used to fight over it, and then one day a Dakota guy ruined it for everyone. Anyway, there's a little story there that goes along with it, but Creator or somebody reached out from the heavens and caused a great storm to close access to a place where Anishinaabe and Dakota people used to acquire gold and wear it in their jewelry. So a Dakota guy ruined it by telling white people where they could find it, and then Creator got upset and closed it off. Anyway, so there's that Grand Portage there. It was a co-occupied landscape between the Saulteaux, Cree, Anishinaabe, Menominee, and Dakota people. But I wish I had the foresight to remember to write down in some of the maps and journals other tribes' names. I just neglected to do that because I'm kind of Lakota-centric. I see a Lakota place name, and that's my focus. Anyway, but I know this is what we call it. I know the Anishinaabe, they have a name for it. I just don't know what that is. We didn't always fight. In fact, there was a lot of intertribal marriages, trade that happened. And before you came in too, I was just articulating that during the Iroquois Morning Wars, the Iroquois would raid the Anishinaabe too, not just Lakota, Dakota people, but they'd raid our peoples to rebuild their population back east. So just like Lakota, Dakota people have relatives amongst the Iroquois today, so do the Anishinaabe. Anyway, probably didn't answer your question.
No, it's like, because I'm thinking about, like, I've been researching some of the mounds in that area too, and I'm wanting to know, like, who to associate those with, because I think it was a co-project, but I know that there was some ancient, like, I forget what the name of that culture is up in the northern, like, Minnesota border, but I'm, like, curious, you know, because I know the Cheyenne moved through there at one point, I know the Cree were lower, you know what I mean? I think that's the Laurel they associate with the Cree. So I'm just like, I'm trying to find out those connections to understand what happened. That's like the pre-written period history, you know?
Yeah. There's a wonderful book by Samuel Manillo, Dakota Narratives, which details a story in the Great Lakes region where in order to bring peace between our tribes at war, Anishinaabe, Menominee, Saulteaux, Cree, Potawatomi and others would come together, Sac and Fox too, and they would bury their relatives together in some mounds. And so archaeologists, anthropologists today will go to a mound, do a survey, an excavation, and are struck by whose remains are we looking at. They can't place it because we buried our relatives together to make that place in the landscape sacred so we wouldn't fight. They'd have a big feast, intertribal marriages. Yeah, I don't know if any of us are full-blood Lakota, Dakota, because of the extent of intertribal marriages. Okay, well, that's my stuff. If anyone wants, check out my maps. You don't have to. If anyone's an educator, you can go to my website, and I have all my maps, all the papers I've ever published, including one for the Tribal College Journal. It's on there, but here is a worldview perspective explanation for why South is the world-orienting perspective for Lakota, Dakota. Our maps are South-oriented. There's the map here. Here's this one. I'm going to eventually overlay wild rice with this map here. And the map that's in the back there, you can access it. It'll print out. It's sized to print out at 4 feet by 6 feet. With inset maps there that I've covered in my presentation. And here is the Black Hills Expedition map. You can access that for free. There's no ads, not making anything. Okay, this is a good place for me to bring it to a close so I can wind down and pack stuff up for the next group. If there's no more questions, Pilamaye, thank you.